Welcome to Carver Conversations. I'm your host, Tiff Marchand from Carver Designs, and this is a sabretooth podcast, and I couldn't be more excited to be here. Head on over to sabretooth.com and sign up for their mailing list. They send out a coupon once a month for 25% off. You have 24 hours to use it, so you're not going to want to miss out on that chance. You can use our show code to save 10% off. The code is EM2CO. Head on over, sign up for the mailing list, and if you want to buy them now, EM2CO at checkout. Make sure to have that all in caps, and on to the show. Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Tiff, and today on the show we have George Vondriska from Vondriska Works. He is an icon in the woodworking industry. Not only is he a teacher, he also writes books. He has one out right now about, making live edge tables. So check him out because he is somebody who has been around for a long time. You've read his material if you get the handyman magazines and all of those things. So he's been in your life longer than you've known. So go check him out. And I hope you enjoy learning about him and how he's gotten to where he is. All right, enjoy. Thank you for joining us. I'm super excited to hang out. Just wanted to let you know, our general manager was like, I want Vondriska on here. And I was like, well, he was a little concerned. He doesn't carve a lot. And she was like, no, I love what he does. And I want to highlight him on our show. So I just thought that was really sweet. Jody is great.
I appreciate that. And I think you know how it is with whatever life and social media and stuff. Mm-hmm. Like you throw stuff out there, and when I teach in person, there's all that interaction, and so it's you can gauge the room very quickly. Mm-hmm. And with stuff that you put online, you can never gauge the room. So I'm glad to hear somebody's actually looking at my Instagram page and cares. So.
No, absolutely. And, you do a wide variety of things I think is really, really neat. And I also saw that you had like a motorcycle page and all this stuff for traveling. So I'm like, this guy's just passionate about a lot of stuff. And I like that about you. That's really cool.
My ADHD kicks in on a regular basis.
I feel like we all have that now, though, with just the internet and everything just so always pulling you back to it and keeping your mind bouncing around. So
yeah,
I get it. How did you get into woodworking to start with? Because you're at the point where, you understand it so well that you're writing books and you're teaching classes and you have schools for different things. But how did it all start? I'm really curious.
Well, I think a big part of it is, I think, I don't know, there's some gene that makes me curious about a lot of stuff, but I think a big part of it too was my dad died when I was 6. Oh, and wow. I have 4 sisters, so it was myself, my 4 sisters, and my mom, and not a lot of money. So there was a lot on my mom's part or my sister's part, a lot of can you fix this, can you fix this, can you fix this? So coupled with like I am still today, I was always trying to turn a lawnmower engine and a baby buggy into a go-kart. I was like, I was given a scroll saw from a neighbor when I was 8. I remember him handing it over the fence at my mom's house to me, this Dunlap scroll saw. So part of it was necessity of just what can I do for my mom and my family? And I don't want to overblow that, whatever. I don't want to make it out more than it is, but it was just a necessity.
No, you were trying to help out. I get that. Yeah, you need to step up.
Yep. And then I think whatever was in me that was just messing with stuff and can I make this thing? Can I do this thing? And I was thinking about this coming up. I was trying to get dates in my head of when this would have happened, but neighbors way down the street from my mom, half a block away from my mom, tore their garage down a stick at a time, not with a push, but they took it apart by hand. And then they were going to build a new garage. So they had this huge pile of lumber, and I walked down there with a red flyer wagon. I walked to their house and I put 2x4s on top of the wagon and I tied them on, and I took the wagon back to my mom's. And I was given the scroll saw. I got a router before I wasn't in high school yet. I had a router and a lathe. So I ended up making a shop in my mom's garage, in half of my mom's garage.
Awesome.
So I brought these 2x4s back so I could build a tool cabinet to start putting
Mm-hmm.
these tools into. And before the point where I could drive my car, because I would have been strapping them on the roof of my mom's 72 Ford Maverick if I'd had access to the car. But I brought everything back in this little red Flyer wagon. So I don't know, it was just a thing. And I think, and still like I am today, like that was about getting the 2x4s to make the cabinet. And then I was messing with the lawnmower engine to make a go-kart. And then I was messing with, I don't know. So
I feel like that was a thing of the times too. Like back then, everybody always just kind of tinkered too. Like you kind of just played because there wasn't other things to distract you. You know what I mean?
And that's, I think that's true. Is like my introduction to television was an RCA black and white television in the living room that you turned on 15 minutes before you were fixing to watch a show.
Yeah.
Because it had to warm up.
Yeah. And, I get it.
So with that, it was funny, like when the TV didn't work. So that was can you fix this thing? That it was full of tubes. And you took the tubes to the pharmacy where they had a tube testing machine.
That's crazy.
Stick them in the machine and it would tell you if that tube was good or bad. And then they had drawers below full of TV tubes. So then you would buy the one that you thought was going to fix the TV. And then, so a couple things with that. So when the TV finally failed where it couldn't be fixed anymore, then it ended up in the basement where I was messing with it. And I was going to try to make, you could take the whole TV out
the whole
of this
panel,
cabinet. So I was going to try to make that into a fish tank because we always had a fish tank at my mom's house. And that was a failed experiment. But that was also how I learned what a capacitor is, because I unplugged the TV and I'm like, okay, I got to take this and this and this out. And I reach in there and I get jolted by this thing. And I'm like, how the hell did that happen? Oops, sorry.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
Because the TV's unplugged and I got jolted because a capacitor holds power after you disconnect power. So that was like, I don't know then how I found out it was like I asked a teacher at school or something. I don't know. But and then and part of the story to it. So then my dad died. I had a substitute dad that he had a guy my dad was George. A friend of my dad's also at General Mills was George, where my dad worked at General Mills. So George Johnson was really my substitute father from the time my dad died. And he had a very active Boy Scout troop. And I grew up in Chicago. George Johnson was in Minneapolis. So at a pretty young age, like 10-ish, my mom would put me on an Amtrak and I would go to St. Paul where the train station was. George Johnson would pick me up at the train. So there's another like, holy crap, really?
Yeah.
Like as a 10-year-old, I was riding the train from Chicago to St. Paul, the Empire Builder. And then I would spend my summers with George and his family and his Boy Scout troop.
That's really
George
cool.
was a very avid carver. Which he tried to teach me hand carving numerous times and bought me Miller's Falls chisels. And it was just that form of carving is not in these hands, but he was also,
it wasn't for you.
No. And he was a guy that like, he'd be talking like this, maybe sitting outside at a fire or whatever and chatting. And he's like messing around with some stick of wood. And then suddenly there's a loon. And it's like an amazing loon that he carved, not even looking at it because he's looking at you while he's talking.
But he's just such a natural. He knew.
Yeah. And he was very DIY, fixing his house, fixing his car, making stuff out of wood, doing this carving. So he was a big influence too, as was Boy Scouts in general. I mean, I really took to Scouts and that whole bushcraft kind of idea of like, I know how to tie a taut line and a bowline and.
Yeah. As I was scrolling your page, I see that outdoors is a big part of your life. Still.
Yeah. So there was just I think part of it is, like I said, that gene that just makes me want to do stuff. And then it was reinforced by the lifestyle of my dad dying. And then the stuff I did with Scouts and with George Johnson. And and then I had, another huge influence. I'm rambling I'm all
No,
over
you're
the map
fine.
here.
I love that you had so many mentors in your life.
In junior high, what today that we call middle school, but we had a great shop program in junior high, and that was Bill Mathis was the teacher. And so I had sixth, seventh, and eighth grade shop with him. And at some point, and this was a big thing, is like the scroll saw that I had been given was working, but not working great. So at some point I said to Bill Mathis, I've got this scroll saw and it's got this problem. Do you think you can fix that? Could you look at it? And he says, well, can't your dad do that? And I said, oh, my dad is dead.
Yeah.
and so he's like, okay, bring it in. I guilted him into looking at it. And he did some stuff to it. I don't remember what. That made it work better. But anyway, I locked in on this guy. And by the time when I was in seventh grade, when I was 11, I said, I want to be a shop teacher, just like Mr. Mathis. And I asked him how he got to that point, where he went to school. And my focus on that, I mean, I was very lucky that at 11, I knew what I wanted to be when I grew up. And I took every shop class. Same in high school. We had a huge shop program that was auto, plastics, drafting, wood shop, construction. I took every class they offered in high school. He had gone to college at University of Wisconsin Stout, which is not far from where I live now, to get his tech ed degree. I went to that same school and got my tech ed degree. So it was, I'm very lucky that I had this, just like I said, this laser focus from a very early age that I want to be a shop teacher. And when I went to Stout, one of the programs for tech ed they offered was called material processes. So you could pick an area, like I want to teach automotive, I want to teach woodworking, I want to teach. So I picked material processes, which fits my goofy brain because it was everything. So in college, I was doing college level classes in casting metal, in plastics, in electronics, in drafting, in foundry, in woodworking, and building construction, to get this huge smattering of stuff, which is like still the way things go for me today. Is I'm turning a wrench on my motorcycle and then I'm in here making a piece of furniture. So yeah, it's a little bit of everything.
I can relate. I went to school for fine art and for graphic design. So I got the hands-on art education with sculpture, pottery, all of those kind of things. And then also printmaking, like every single thing that you could think of in art, I've done it. But then I also got the computer stuff, all that, the designing and the digital fabrication. So like, it was fun going to college for that because every day was different.
Yeah. Well, and the shading that you do when you're hand painting your stuff that gives it the depth is so amazing, that when you're looking at something that's basically a 2D piece of something, but the painting you do on there makes it very three-dimensional. You're very good at that.
My mom taught me that when I was a little kid, when I was probably 4 or 5, and she would always shade her pieces that she used to do, like craft arts, those scroll saw books with the patterns that came in them. Yes. So I was her base coater, and then she would show us how she, did her shading and stuff. So I actually got taught from as a child how to be an artist. And I just kind of and my dad was a woodworker. So eventually the two things kind of blended in after college, which was really fun. But thank you. I really appreciate hearing that feedback. I love.
Yeah, I have to show your stuff. My middle kid is very artistic and she draws on an iPad, but I think there's another aspect, like it's iPad something.
Procreate probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have it. Yeah, that's what I drew the Technodrome in that I just did, was in Procreate.
You guys would have great fun talking, because she's done the artwork she does on there. I'll send you a link.
Yeah, I say send me her link, please.
Yeah, it's very cool stuff. It's you guys would have a lot in common on your drawing.
Cool. Yeah, I can't wait to see it. I saw you have 2 daughters and a son.
2 daughters and a son. Yep.
Okay, I did some stalking.
Well, the wonder of the internet, it's like, it's pretty easy to find stuff.
What's funny is I was curious when you started your Instagram, because I figured you've been in this world probably your whole life, just because of how I can kind of see your progression right now. And I thought okay, so why did he start? And it looks like maybe because you started with is it the woodworking guild or doing the woodworking shows? Is that what it was?
So my Instagram page, I'm going to guess. So part of my timing comes from, it's like whatever, AD, BC. So BC for me is like old shop, new shop. So I've been in this shop since about 2012. Instagram happened when I was here because I think one of the first big things I did with Instagram is I went to Milwaukee to help a friend of mine build a garage.
Okay.
And I know there's an Instagram post of me loading my truck with tools to take to his place. And then there's a bunch of stuff day by day as we're building the garage of his. And I think that is probably one of my first big series of projects on Instagram. Nothing to do with woodworking, it's building construction, but whatever. So
it's still
probably
documenting what you're doing, and that's what we do.
And it was probably like 8 years ago, and it was, and my thing with it was more to make people aware of the classes I do here. And it was a big learning curve of like, initially I tried to oversell all the time, like, here I am cutting a dado on a table saw. You could learn how to cut a dado if you take my cabinet making class. Here I am turning a bowl. You could learn how to turn a bowl. And in the end, I learned the more subtle stuff of just doing what I'm doing and let people take away from that whatever they want. It's more organic and it works better. And then people will ask questions, and I'm not trying to hard sell the classes. So they like, if in the end they say, I want to know more about CNC, I want to know more about bolt turning, then I can point them toward the classes if they want to go in that direction. So yeah, the Instagram stuff was really a way to try to get people more aware of the stuff I'm doing away from the video stuff has a pretty big footprint on its own because the company that owns that does. So, they're constantly bombarding people with emails and they've got their own social media presence and that kind of stuff. So I was really trying to get my brand, the Vondriska brand, more prevalent through Instagram than it had previously been.
That makes a lot of sense. And did that open up your world to all the other makers, I assume? Because as I was scrolling, you hang with such a various amount of people. And I constantly see you in other people's posts. I just he has such a network is what I've been thinking for years now. It's pretty amazing.
Well, it's like, and it's not something I think about consciously a lot. So it's an interesting thing with social media because you run into people where they, you meet them and then, I don't know, it kind of goes from point A to point M or whatever. And you end up with the feeling like, are they like, do they want to spend time with me? Or is it just like, because I have 29,000 followers and they have 3? And there are some people where it starts to come through that like all they're doing is trying to ride the back of other people's success to get like placement in their social media so that they get a leg up. And in the end, I've been lucky with people like Matt Cremona is the nicest guy ever. And I feel just lucky to have the opportunity to talk to him. And if I have a question about lumber, I can call him. And so like the byproduct that, he's way ahead of me in social media stuff. So if a byproduct of that is I show up in one of his posts, that's pretty cool. But like, I love that I've done live streams from his shop for Woodworkers Guild. And I love that he says yes to that. And I'm like, really? You're cool with me coming to your shop and doing a live stream? So I feel just lucky to be, to have that network and people that I can lean on to get my questions answered. And it just like inherently works out okay, hopefully for everybody. And hopefully nobody's looking at me and saying, oh, that Vondriska is all he's doing is riding my coattails.
Oh my goodness. I don't think anyone's thinking that. I think they desire to be around you and try to soak up some of that knowledge, like I think that's one of the things at least I've heard from the maker community. They know that you have a great knowledge base, and I like that you're going around and you're sharing it in all different ways, like the makers camp, in the Catskill maker camp. That are you going there again this year too?
Yeah, and that is like, so if people are we listening to this or watching this? Do we watch
We're
this
both.
podcast?
We do both. Yes.
So if people are listening and watching, Catskill Mountain Maker Camp is, if you're not aware, is Woodstock meets, I hate to even say a woodworking show because it's woodworking and metalworking and I poured pewter there for the first time
I
in my
did that
life
too when you
last time.
carved into the fish, right?
Well,
And then
yeah, and
I did that
a
last year
cuttle
too.
bone? Are you kidding me?
Yes,
Like,
yeah,
could this be simpler? I want to do
yeah.
this at my shop.
I know. I was like, this is a sweet setup.
So it's definitely worth looking at. I think it's not an inexpensive weekend and it's not easy to get to. It's like 50 miles from Albany, New York, but it's a beautiful part of the country. And one of the things that the first time I went that really amazed me was the intermix of, I'll say, instructors, which isn't, that's way too formal for that event, but the mix of instructors and attendees beyond the event. And
Yeah.
like when I would teach for the woodworking shows, we teachers as a group would typically go out for dinner after. And by the end of the show, it was like, we're going for dinner, like, just, and there was this fence up, like, we're turning the clock stops at 5 o'clock and we are leaving. And it was very cool at Maker Camp that we're sitting around the fire, possibly having an adult beverage or two. And it was everybody. It was people coming to the show. It was people teaching at the show, at the event. And that's so cool that interaction of the ongoing, and not that it's all tech talk at that point of how do you CNC plastic or whatever,
Right.
but just like everybody just enjoying hanging out with each other. And
it was such an amazing time.
Yeah, that's a very neat part. It's a low key event that's very casual, but there's so much cool stuff going on. And I'm thrilled for them that they've grown that year after year, and I'm thrilled that they're doing it again and they're willing to have me back. It's very cool.
Yeah.
It's very, very fun. And they do Austin and everyone does such a great job of knitting that all together, and what a bunch of moving parts to make that happen. And to the stuff they're doing in between now, like the timber build or build in or whatever that's called.
And the various hammer-ins.
Yeah, they've got so much stuff going on to take advantage of that great space.
No, they really do.
It's really, really neat.
That's cool. Well, we'll be there for Sabretooth, so come say hi too, and I'll come visit you.
Yes.
Yeah. But yeah, it's a really great time. I definitely encourage people to attend it. Even just as a visitor pass, like the $15, just come and hang out and be there for the experience. Like we joke that you buy that and then you end up upgrading, but but it is nice to just be around all these, people who are into the same things as you. It's
so immersive. And again, it's not immersive in a pain in the ass way where it's like, I'm so sick of talking about CNC, but it's immersive and I say CNC because that's historically what I've done. And I'll do that again this fall when I'm there. So that's why I'm referencing that. But it's just neat that everybody's putting their heads together and talking about stuff. And it goes back to where we started, which is like, if you have an interest in this, and I feel like for young people today, it isn't so much like I want to be a woodworker, it is I want to work with my hands. And they do flit around from forging to welding to woodworking to pottery to artwork to whatever. And so it's great at Maker Camp that all those different things are going. It's not just a woodworking show. There's so many different activities going on. And then they're burning a Tyrannosaurus Rex in the middle of the yard.
I know. Can't beat that. Can't beat that.
Google that. That was a pretty cool thing.
That was a lot of fun. I wonder what they're going to build this year now. I'm actually really curious.
Yeah, it's a very freewheeling event. It's very fun.
Yeah.
But with enough structure to make it worthwhile. So like I was impressed that, because I think the first year, and everybody's learning what they're doing, but I think the first year it was just like, George is going to run a CNC. And then the second time we did it, they said, well, give us a schedule of, we want to know, what are you doing at 9 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 1 o'clock, whatever. So there were set times that then people could show up and they know I'm going to be cutting aluminum at 11 o'clock or whatever it was. So that little bit higher level of organization is helpful so people can map out what they want to do and what they want to see while they're there.
I totally agree. You got to know when things are going to be happening. It just makes it easier for people to choose. Schedules are nice. That's great. So you're all done doing the woodworking show because you have your own place now. How long have you had your own shop?
Well, I built my first shop in 98. So at that time, my then wife and I were on a hobby farm, and there was a kind of an old barn there that I rehabbed into a shop. So I had come off of, I taught for Shopsmith for a long time back when they had retail stores, and they closed all the stores. So I got a job as a production manager of a commercial cabinet shop, which had a huge influence on my woodworking and streamlining my woodworking, because that was all about efficiency.
I say they have all the right tools in all the right places.
Well, yeah, and we had, with the cabinet shop, there were 13 people working there, and we were building every Old Navy store in the country, or no, all the Old Navy stores east of the Mississippi, every Banana Republic store in the country, and then commercial fixtures for a lot of local stuff. So it was really about, my job was to get stuff out the door as efficiently as possible. So that learning to streamline woodworking processes, which I've now filtered into the classes I teach and the videos I do, was a huge part of that job, to get everything done quickly but well. So I really learned a lot about that. But that was a means to an end, which was, I wanted to get to a point where I had my own shop and I could teach classes in my own building instead of working for somebody else. So I was production manager at that place for 4 years. During that time, not that it took me 4 years to do, but I was saving money and then building my own shop. So then in 1998, I cut the umbilical cord with being a W-2 employee, and I went completely self-employed and started. I was doing a lot of custom work then, because it was my classes in my shop weren't a thing yet. So I was doing a lot of custom work and offering classes, and then eventually that went more this way. And today I don't do any custom work if I, unless it's a really good friend or something, but I don't take any custom pieces, commission pieces at this point. And I'm very heavy on teaching and the video stuff, intellectual property. So
that's great. It's kind of freeing when you stop taking commissions. It's like,
well, and there are people who are really good at it. Dave McKintrick is an example. He wrote for me for a long time, Woodworkers Guild. He did a lot of videos with me, and he made his living for years taking pieces. And good for you, Dave. And it's just like, I don't know. I never really cracked the nut on how to be good at that and make sure everybody's happy and gonna write me a check. And like, there's they're just easier ways, simpler ways for me to monetize myself in my shop than do commission pieces. And I'm looking at this now, I'm not at all adverse to like making stuff and selling it. There's a gallery I'm talking to in Western Wisconsin that wants to put stuff for me in there. And I like that idea of like, today I want to make, and it fits my brain. Like, today I want to make a charcuterie board. So I'm going to do that. And then I can go to the gallery. And what happens with it now is like, I give it to one of my kids because I don't need it. So I want to make it and I don't have a home for it. So
that'd be great to have a place to put it then.
An outlet. Yeah.
Yep. And then you can make little showcases and constantly change it up. I'm at that stage too, where I'm like, I just kind of want a product line, and then I want to do stuff that I want to do that are fun, and like the extras that are around me, and those are for fun. But like, I just kind of want a product line, and then I want to do like the podcasting and the social media and just have fun with it, because like you said, there's other ways to monetize things that you like, and then keep the other things kind of more for passion.
And I'm cool with like a retail store keeping, well, this gallery keeps 50%. 35% is a little more common, but they're a high-end gallery, so it's okay. And I'm cool with them doing that, because then they can maintain retail hours and they can deal with the customers and they can run the credit cards and they can do all that stuff that I want to be camping on Saturday, not keeping my retail store open. So when I bought this shop, it's 3,200 square feet, and the front third of it at that end, I was going to make as a retail store. And this is a tiny, sleepy little town of 1,800 people. So that probably wouldn't work anyway. I don't think I would be enough of a destination to bring people in. And then in the end, I finally decided, like, I don't want to do retail hours. And in that space, like, monetizing the square footage is more useful to me as class space. So I can do 10 students instead of 8 students in a class, than to try to set it aside as a retail store. So that is no longer a thing. Now it's just stuff.
Is that how many you have in your class now? You have 10 at a time when you have?
It depends on if I can get somebody to help me. 10 is a lot for me to do by myself and watch fingers.
Mhm.
So 8 is a more common number. And in my old shop, that was 1,000 square feet. I would do 6. So that was a good growth move to this, having more square footage here, was I could take more people in a class. And then it depends too, like the CNC class, the all day CNC class, we spend a bunch of time on laptops doing VCarve.
Mhm.
So, I mean, that could be 15 people and it doesn't, we're all
Right.
sitting at tables learning software. So there's no real ceiling on that. But in something like cabinet making, bowl turning is limited because I have 8 lathes, so I can have 8 people.
Mhm.
But yeah, those 2 classes hover around 8.
That's perfect though. Yeah, you don't want to have too many people. Then you, like you said,
Well, yeah, and
you
you don't
can't
want to
watch
make it,
fingers. I like that. I like that saying.
and I don't want it to be a factory. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like
Mhm.
it's got
It's
to be
intimate.
small enough that people feel like you could answer their questions. And if I don't have a shop assistant, so 2 of my kids worked for me. My son first, and then after he went to the Marines, then my middle kid worked for me. So then they would also help in classes, and that's a huge difference
Mhm.
to make people feel like they're getting the attention they need, and then also just make sure everybody is safe. And now that they're gone doing their own thing, and I'm on my own, it's I don't want to. I don't want to just monetize the classes for the sake of monetizing the
Right.
classes by
Right.
having more people and then have the compromise of having it be fun and a good experience.
That's great. So I'm curious, what led you to writing your first book, and why that topic?
The CNC one was a friend of mine was actually approached by the publisher first. Randy Johnson was approached by the publisher first, and he replaced me at one of the Shopsmith stores as a teacher. That's how he and I
Okay.
first met. And then he's the one that first introduced me to CNC. So at that point, he was working for ShopBot, and he showed up one day with this ShopBot desktop machine and was like, I think I know you well enough that I know you would enjoy this. So that was like, this is diverging from your question, but it was
No, that's fine. You got to learn
CNC
the
part.
CNC first before you
Yeah.
write a book about it.
And I'm looking at this thing like, with a bunch of eye rolls, and I had never, I never designed on a computer in my life. For the most part, if I build something, I just start cutting wood and I build it in my head.
Right.
And then I go in the shop and I start cutting wood, and that's it. I never draw it ahead of time on paper or on the computer. So that aspect of working with the CNC was like, I don't know. But conceptually, it intrigued me enough that drove me to learn how to use VCarve, and then what capabilities does the machine have. So anyway, so that was how the first CNC got in here. And then Randy had been approached about the book and started it, but he was so busy doing other stuff that he didn't have time to actually work on the book. So in the end, I did all the photography. I wrote the first draft. He had the table of contents produced. And then he went over that and we worked on the next evolution of it together. And then it published. So it was really just kind of like, it's one of these weird things that just fell out of the sky. And you don't make a lot of money on a book, so it's more part of it was getting your name out there as a writer in the book world.
Right.
So yeah, it was really just dumb luck of Randy needed help on the book, and as a sidebar, writing that book is what taught me to throw knives, because it was, there was this
How did that
deadline,
happen?
and,
Okay.
and God forbid that one, and I'm having this conversation with my daughter right now because she's writing a book that's due in August. And my favorite saying is, I love deadlines. They make a wonderful whooshing sound as they sail on by. And so I had this deadline on the book,
Yep.
and now, of course, it's like 2 weeks before the deadline. And oh my gosh, I got to finish this thing in the next 2 weeks. So I was sitting at this very desk with this very keyboard, tip tap typing like crazy. All the photography was done, but I had a boatload of writing to do. So I would write. And then I would go in the shop and I would throw knives, and to give my brain, like, I need something completely different. And I find with knife throwing, you got to be in this, like, it's like archery for me as well. You got to be focused on this thing. Like, you can't be distracted and thinking about other stuff. So I'd go out there and I'd throw a couple rounds of knives, 6 knives around, and just to give my brain a break. And then I would come back. So when it started, like maybe I could get 1 knife out of 6 to stick in the target. And by the time the book was done, I could stick 6 pretty regularly in the center of the target. So it was a happy byproduct of having to get the book done in a 2-week period. So
I'm such a movie lover that in my head, I've got like a training montage for you as you're writing, like, you know, put on some 80s jam.
Yep.
By
Yep.
the end, just bullseyes.
Music is loud and
Yeah.
some form of diversion.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the CNC thing, just kind of fell into place and went under its own steam from there.
And you must have enjoyed the process enough to write your current book to do it again, or how'd that
Well,
happen?
yeah. So the second one was funny because that was Fox Chapel, the second publisher, and they approached me about doing a cabinet making book. So I had started on that and I wasn't in too deep. I maybe had the table of contents done and that was about it. And then they came to me, here's the power of social media for us.
Mm-hmm.
So they came to me and said, we had a person writing a live edge slab book, but he dropped out. And we think this is a very timely topic. We've looked at your Instagram feed and see that you've done live edge stuff. Do you think you could do live edge for us for now instead of the cabinet making book?
Okay, a little pivot.
And I was like, I felt like I had put live edge stuff together, but not in a real formal kind of, like I was doing it because I liked doing it, not because I was teaching it or whatever.
Right.
I don't think I'd even done any videos with it. But in the end, I said yes. So then that evolved quickly into, I think the yes was in September. They needed the first chapter in October. And they wanted what's called a BLAD, which is book layout and design is what that stands for. So, and apparently in November, there are all these publishing shows, publishing events. So the publisher wanted a BLAD, so that's an example of what the book is going to look like, that they can parade around at these events and say to people, say to buyers, retail stores, are you going to be interested in this? So, so I got that done in October, and then half book deadline in January, final book deadline in March. So,
wow.
So, and that was, to blow my horn on this, that included developing there's 8 projects in the book. I developed every one of the projects from scratch. If they needed SketchUp drawings, I had to do that, and then also build it. Like, what's
it's not that you were
now?
just writing a book, but you're also having to build everything that you're writing about.
Yeah.
So
and I did all the
lot.
photography myself, which is one of my proud. I'm prouder of the photography in that book than I am of the writing. The writing is, I find the writing very easy to do once you take the pictures, because then it's like you describe what you did in the picture, and that's pretty easy to do. But getting the photography right was a big deal, a very big deal to me. And a huge influence for that was I did a lot of writing for American Woodworker magazine and Family Handyman magazine, and the editor-in-chief, Ken Collier, was huge about getting pictures to tell stories. We used professional photographers at that time. Everything was on film, on Hasselblad cameras, and they would change the back from a Polaroid back, a black and white Polaroid back, to a color Polaroid back, to a film Polaroid back.
So you've just seen technology improve and improve and improve throughout the years.
If we shot 8 pictures for an article in a day, that was a really, really good day. And today, like, I don't know what I shoot. I probably shoot 108, and then I
crazy, right?
6. So the whole digital aspect of that. I mean, now I don't use a professional photographer, and I've published a book, and all those pictures are in the book. And it's people who write, contributors who write for me for Woodworkers Guild of America. They're all doing their own photography. So so that whole evolution of change has been absolutely amazing. So anyway, huge influence from AW and Family Handyman with getting pictures to tell a big story, so you don't have to write as much. And that's where a lot of that, my ability to do that today, as a result of Ken Collier pushing photographers and art directors so hard, and what I learned from watching what they did.
Yeah, your career is really, I think, morphed over the years, and kind of, I feel very similar path where you learn a lot from all these random things that you've done, and they kind of all meld in, and now you have so many skills under your belt that you've just earned, you know?
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. It beats working.
I am on my second week of being full-time self-employed, and I'm loving it.
Good for you.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Very, very recent.
And what was that? What day job did you leave, if you can say, like, without killing me?
Yeah. I did 16 years in at a job that I just left in marketing. So I did all of the flyers that you got in the newspaper or in the mail that had all the coupon books in it. So Papa John's, Pizza Hut, Domino's, all those advertisements. I literally worked in that world all day. So my day was just like pushing art, like not fun art, just pushing art through and like satisfying the clients and interactions. But I learned a lot on that day job about how to write, great emails to clients, client services, how to, like, navigate working relationships with different companies and agencies. So, I take that to what I do now, and I have a lot of skills that I can use for interacting with people. So it does help.
Yeah. And do you feel like when you're doing your Instagram stuff, is that marketing part of the professional marketer part of your brain engaging there with, like, so when I do this post,
Not
if I
yet.
write it this way instead of this way, like,
yeah, that has to, I think, I moonlighted for all those years doing the social media at night after my kids had gone to bed. So whatever I do is always quick right before I started my day job. So now I get to actually think about things a little bit more, and actually start bringing that marketing aspects into my life. But the other stuff, like the social media management for other companies, that's ticking away. Like, I'm trying to write the appropriate things because I manage Workbench Con, Haven, and Sabretooth's Instagrams. So there, I'm starting to, like, utilize that information, not for myself yet, but one day.
Yeah. Well, what a great byproduct, though, now, so that you can be self-employed.
Exactly. Yep.
And use all that experience to then roll into the stuff that'll let you wonder where your next check is coming from for the rest of your life.
Yes. Yeah, that was my thing. So, like, having a family, I have 2 kids and a husband and a house, that I, you don't want to lose. So for me to quit my job, I had to make sure that I had some kind of income ready, that I didn't have to, like, just squirm as an artist. Like, I'm not leaning on my painting skills right now. One day I'd love to, but right now it's like, no, I need to have a job, just my own job, and I choose. So it's cool.
Well, and it's nice to have those. It was the same for me in '98 when I was teaching. Then out of the blue, American Woodworker magazine was purchased by Reader's Digest.
Okay.
And the editorial office was moved to Minneapolis, where Family Handyman was. They already owned Family Handyman. So one day I get a call that's like, would you like to freelance write for American Woodworker magazine? So in the end, I became the tools and new products editor for AW, which was still self-employed, but it put me on a monthly retainer with them. So that was a great ramp, a great runway into being self-employed. Was that didn't cover my nut, but it went a long way toward covering my nut. And I knew that no matter what, every month I was going to get that retainer check from American Woodworker. And that was hugely beneficial in me being able to ramp up my classes in my shop.
How many years did you do that for? You said 4 years?
For American Woodworker? No, that was a long time. It was 98 to like early 2000. Well, so I guess maybe that was, I got to think a second. I'm trying to find a timestamp in my head. I know, I think I was with American Woodworker probably more like 6 or 8 years.
Okay.
And then because they were sister publication really with Family Handyman, I was doing a little bit of stuff for Family Handyman magazine at the same time, which was another great set of contacts. And it's just like in the world of people that you brush against, it's a great lesson in don't piss anybody off, because you never know. And stuff just kind of circles around. Shopsmith was a great example. There was all sorts of corporate activity going on with Shopsmith that really torqued me off. But I went in the Peace Corps. I was gone for about 3 years. I had worked for Shopsmith before that, came back from Africa, was looking for a job in teaching, like to be a middle school or high school teacher, and couldn't find anything, and ended up back with Shopsmith again, teaching. And as much as pre-Peace Corps, when I left Shopsmith for the last time, I wanted to be like, and then, and I didn't.
Yeah.
And then whatever, 3 or 4 years later, I'm back working for Shopsmith again. And then, so it's just like, networking is such a cliche word, but it's a really big part
super important.
of, it's like we were talking about at the beginning of the people in our world that we deal with, that we, become friends with. And in the end, it gives everybody a leg up. And that's cool when you can, if I can leg up for you and then you can leg up for Shar or whatever, it all works out.
It does. Yeah, no, it's true. Everybody rooting on for each other. Like I talk about this all the time on like my other podcasts, where our maker community is so strong, and we build these relationships with each other and teach each other how to work with brands, how to approach people, and then like you said, hey, we need somebody this. Oh, well, Char's awesome. We should pull her into this. She'd be a great addition, like those contacts are important, and it is important to not burn bridges. Like just be civil unless something is, too far, but
and and I don't want to make it sound like a conniving, taking advantage sort of way, but I think just like, retrospect, like at 61 lessons I'm trying to give my kids, the oldest of whom is 20. Oh, she's going to be mad at me. 26 right now. It's just that kind of thing. Like, it's fine that you're not thrilled about this, but just, slow down the train. I'll pump the brakes a little bit and see what happens next. And and the video stuff was a good example. That's not that I was mad at anybody, but I did videos in like 1999 for North American Outdoor Group, which was Handy Magazine. I did 3 videos for them.
Okay.
So this is pre-2000. On VHS tape, if you can believe it.
Oh yeah.
So then in 2007, a company in Minneapolis, St. Paul was looking to do woodworking videos, and a guy who was now working for TN Marketing, that company, said, well, when I used to work for North American Outdoor Group, we used this guy for videos, and I wonder if he's still in the area. So 7 or 8 years later, that guy brought my name in front of TN Marketing, which then resulted in 125 woodworking DVDs and all the WWGOA content I'm still doing today fell out of Mike Vale remembering me in 07 from work I did in 99. So it's funny how stuff cycles around.
Yeah. And I'm starting to see the carving community starting to connect like that a little bit more, and starting to build those relationships, because I didn't feel it before, maybe because I wasn't so heavily involved in it, but it's really neat to start seeing that build up, and like this podcast, introducing them to other people that they might want to follow and kind of join into that maker community, because it's a really big thing for me, at least. It's been a huge part of my life for these last like 6 years where I've really concentrated on it.
So the carving thing is cool for me because it's so different. Like especially coming off of being a production manager of a commercial cabinet shop, my woodworking tends to be very lineal. Like I'm going to look at a plan, I'm going to build a cabinet, I'm going to create a plan, I'm going to build a piece of furniture. Where with carving, I would put carving and epoxy work and bowl turning in a similar category, which is you kind of never know what you're going to get. And it's a part of it I really like, is that the free form aspect of it is like, so I know this chunk of wood is going to give me a wooden spoon.
Yep.
But what that spoon is really going to look like when it's done, I'm not sure, but I'm going to figure it out as I go. And it's, a spoon is the real micro shot of that, where like when you turn a platter, and maybe there's a picture, not turn, but you power carve a platter, and maybe there's a picture in my head to start. But then when I cut into the wood, and I start seeing grain, it's like, well, if I
It's
change,
all
and
changes.
this is what I can't do on a lathe,
Yeah.
because it's got to be round on a lathe. But when you're doing just a freeform shape, you can adapt that shape to, I just ran into this really cool spalted pocket, and I want to make sure I don't take that
Move it
away.
out. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and that freeform nature of it is like, just, that's it, it's like the knife throwing thing. It's like when you're doing that, it just puts you in this different woodworking place where it just lets the creative side of your brain go,
Yeah.
and you're adapting to the situation and the material and the tool, and just seeing what happens next. And I love that, because it's such a neat thing about wood, is that I've got a small sawmill, and I've cut lots and lots and lots of logs in my life, but I'm still amazed every time I take the first slab
Yep.
off and open it up and see that grain for the first time. It's always so crazy cool. So same with this, like that, exposing what's in there is really, really fun, and just seeing what you're going to get.
Yeah, and a lot of wood turners have been power carving their bowls and whatever they make on a lathe lately. I've noticed and adding texture and stuff. So it's fun seeing them like blend the two together, because I do that with the CNC. So I'll spend 3 days designing just digitally before I even put it on the CNC. Let it do its thing, and then I'll pull out the power carving tools, and then there you go. There's my freeing, relaxing, like, all right, I have this main image, but what is the edges going to do? Like, are they going to incorporate into the piece? Like the one that's hidden behind me. The CNC did all of this, but then I went in and I took my tools and made it deeper, So
That's very cool.
yeah, it's just kind of fun to blend the two things together. So it's a lot of fun seeing people do that. Like, and with the chainsaws, like doing most of it with the chainsaws and then coming and just hitting it at the end with the burrs.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's a great thing to have. I think it's a great thing to have in your back pocket as well. And I've done it on some live edge slabs too, where you end up with, maybe you have two live edges, and then if it's been cross cut, well, no, I mean, no matter what, it's been chainsawed, if nothing else.
Right.
So you've got these ends that kind of don't jive with the edges because they're not live edges. So then using the burrs to address those and just give them a more organic look, so they match the live edges a little better, is I think that's a great use too of the power carving stuff.
I agree, and it's fun.
Yeah.
My dad had sent me some live edge pieces that he had that same issue, that it wasn't blending on the sides like you're saying, and he just brought it over to have me just add a little and then call it a day. Yeah,
it's a neat way to change it and just freeform it, and I mean, and you can't go wrong. It's you really can't screw it up.
Yeah, I know that is like the barrier to entry is nice with it, because it is what it is, and like you said, there's no set plan, so it's a lot of fun to get into. And I like seeing people who build furniture start, like Eric Curtis, who'll just add a little bit of texture on the front or something, like just a little something to make it stand apart and give it some interest.
Well, that cabinet he did, right? That was Eric, I think, in the last couple months, where it was two doors.
Yes.
I think in maple, but then kind of a wave pattern went across both doors. They were overlaid doors and they met in the middle. And then that diagonal pattern went all the way across the two doors. That was incredible.
Yeah,
that was, I got to steal that idea. That was amazing.
Everyone should, as he said when I interviewed him, he's like, please steal my ideas, steal them. It's nice to be inspired, like, like you're going to do it, but it's still going to be different when you do it.
Yeah. And I think I've seen people get testy about, like, this is my thing that I do, and now other people are doing this, where I feel like, and I get, maybe that's just the dominant teacher in me, is like, I haven't succeeded with a mortise and tenon until you can cut a mortise and tenon. Like, the whole point I'm talking about this is to enable other people to do the stuff that I do. And I don't do anything that's so cool or so proprietary or so whatever, like that I've whatever copyrighted this intellectual property of how I make a dado or some crazy thing. Like, it's just you throw that stuff out there to the world, and geez, I hope people are using it and doing it and copying it. Otherwise,
Yeah,
most
why'd you
of my
teach him?
life has been stupid. So,
My life's been a sham.
yeah. What's the point?
Yeah. 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 And like I hope to inspire people to try do different things, and not just stay rigid, and explore. Like that's what I've been trying to do. So it's fun when you start seeing people tag you like inspired, try this. And I'm like,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. It's neat. It's a
Yeah.
good payoff.
Yeah. It feels really good. Like, oh, you like that enough to go try it?
Yeah.
Neat. Like,
Well, and
yeah.
it's like what we were talking about at the beginning, when you just throw all of this stuff out into the world, and again, like at Maker Camp, teaching in person, you're interacting with people and you're getting those reactions. But when we do all this stuff digitally, it's like, well, I don't know. I hope that's a good video. I don't know. Like whoosh, off it goes. And like clicker count is one thing, but I don't want to get bogged down in this, but like the engagement aspect of, are people commenting? Are people saving it? Are people saying, boy, I can't wait to do this in my shop? That's the cool part.
I
Is
100% agree. The comments, right? The feedback. What did you like about this video? Tell me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's neat. And it's I'm not great at social media, but in my limited experience, the ones you plan the least are the ones that come out the best.
Yeah.
Like it's some fluke of the social media universe. Is don't over, if you're trying to create a viral video, you will fail absolutely. But when it's just something's happening in your shop and you grab your phone, so I'm not using a tripod, I'm not using the DSLR, I'm not lighting the shot.
Yeah.
I'm holding my phone, and that's the one that everybody loves. Like, all right. It's a good lesson in tooling down my photographic equipment, I guess.
I am that rogue person holding the phone most of the time. But I plan on upping my game. Not really. I have the nice camera. I just never pull it out because like the phone is just always on me. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, no, I agree.
And the cameras work.
I was on my bicycle this morning, and holy buckets, the sunrise was amazing. And and I'm not going to have my Canon T8i on my bike with me. So, but my phone is there because I'm listening to music. And so as I'm pedaling, I can pull out my phone and get a picture of the sunrise as I go by. And it is like, so I've got an iPhone, and the quality off of that is incredible. We've used, even when the pros are here shooting, so like every 6 weeks, a crew is in my shop shooting video. And if there's stuff where we're trying to hide a camera someplace to get a shot, and we don't want to see production in the shot, we don't want to see the camera in there, we've frequently done that with a phone, and that ends up in the streaming videos that people are watching online, that we're, the same stuff they're shooting, they're marrying that footage into the stuff they're shooting with $20,000 video cameras. So it works great. It works really well. And you're right, the convenience of it is incredible. It's like always a camera in your pocket.
Yep. And then my thing though is I always end up recording vertically and not horizontal, so I have to work on that. But
but now with reels,
I know, right? And then like shorts too.
So that's my kid is social media for a big advertising agency. So I was having this conversation with her the other day, like, what's the deal? She gets this old guy in tune with what's happening in the social media world today. And I said, part of the problem with reels is I like shooting on my DSLR because I can get a better shot. But I can't shoot vertically on my DSLR. And I've got new software. I use Vegas as my editing software. And in the new version of that, you can edit vertically, but then too, it's more complicated. I got to get it from this to my desktop to do the edit. I got to get it back to my phone so I can post it. And blah, 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 blah.
They sell the rigs too. Like you could hold your phone and your camera at the same angles, but then you have two separate things you have to edit, Yeah.
So I try to be smart when I remember to because I don't think in iMovie you can't edit vertically, right? You can't, if you,
I don't know. I end up using it on my phone. I'll edit on my phone.
Because I think it crops it. I think if I bring in vertical footage, it crops it to a square.
Oh,
and
okay.
If I bring in horizontal footage, I can do whatever I want with that. But so that makes the vertical shooting harder to pull off. Is like you gotta get it right in the first go, because you can't take it to iMovie and edit it. But somebody watching will correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not
They
sure
will. They'll
you're
tell
familiar
us.
with, people on the internet love to correct you when you're wrong, or when you're not wrong. They still love to correct you.
That's true. That's true. Do you have a lot of that?
You know what? It's tapered off a lot recently. There's the kiss of death. Now it's going to ramp up again, but more like, and it's so a few years ago it was worse than it is now. I don't know what changed. But with the stuff that's publishing either through my Instagram or through the WWGOA videos, people aren't weighing in as much on that anymore, saying, well, and I don't mind. I have zero problem with the discussion over, I do this, you do this. But it's funny because then when I teach classes, I often say, and whether I'm teaching here or at the Mark Adams School or in a Rockler store, the group is always the same, but they just change their faces. And in that group, there will be a person who's determined to let everybody know that they know more than I do.
Yeah.
And again, I have zero problem with, let's talk about this. But when it's coming in as I know more than you do, then that's a different deal. So it's the same, it makes sense that the demographic watching videos on social media or online is the same demographic. So there's that person in that group too, who really wants to let everybody know how stupid you are and how smart they are. So I think I have yet to engage in that. I don't think I've ever commented. I don't think I've ever replied to any of those comments, because it's just like, you can't, their name is Tweedledum02 and my name is George Vondriska. So like they have this, sorry about that. They have this completely anonymous presence on the web that I don't have. So it's just like, there's no good can come of getting into a back and forth with that person.
I figured you must encounter that because of your teaching. So you're saying like, this is how I do it, or this is how you do it. So people are always gonna like, red flag, So yeah.
And the preface to that is always, the cool thing about woodworking is there are about 4,000 ways to do every one thing. So what works for me is, and then that like their ears are closed when you do that, what works for me part. And then it goes to just like that I'm telling them this is how it has to be done.
Yeah.
And I know I've been teaching since 1986. So I'm pretty confident my style is not, this is what you must do. It's a very free flow, like this works for me, but we can try something else. And so yeah, I don't think I'm pushing my woodworking down anybody's throat, but people are funny till they're not. And then
Well, I know we're almost at the end, but I'm curious how long you've been riding. I see that you had like your motorcycle jackets in the back.
So I in college, which was probably before you were born, I bought a Kawasaki 250 and a bunch of boxes. And I had a good friend who was an avid Harley rider. So he kind of pushed me in this direction. So I put that bike back together. They were back to the making part of
I was gonna say
no owner's manual, no Haynes manual. It was just a bunch of parts. So I put that bike back together. And then in college, it was just like a way to get back and forth. I lived outside of town. It was a way to get back and forth to town. And then I didn't have one for the longest time, but probably 8 years ago, maybe 6 years ago, a friend of mine's dad had a 1984 Honda Rebel 250. And my premise for buying that was I want to teach my kids to drive a motorcycle. But in the end, it was very self-serving because I rode the heck out of that thing. And in retrospect, it was like I'm 5'10", and it was like my knees are kind of up here like this, and I'm riding this little 250. But I rode the heck out of that bike, and it was a great reintroduction for me into motorcycles. Ginny and George learned to drive it. We all went to the tech school and for 2 days and did the class and got our motorcycle licenses. So since then my friend Charlie, who I ride with a lot, gives me a hard time that I change motorcycles every year, but he's been riding for a really long time. So he's really set on what he likes.
Yes. Yep.
For me, it was learning. Like, I got this Suzuki Boulevard 800 And that was a pretty good bike, but it wasn't big enough. Then I ended up with a motorcycle camper, a tent camper. That bike wasn't big enough to pull the camper. So I bought a Yamaha cruiser, and I didn't like how that rode. It was very top heavy. And then I went to another Boulevard that was bigger a little bit. So yeah.
Have you found the one yet?
Well, so just this spring, I got a 2015 Indian Roadmaster, and it was a funny thing. My girlfriend and I went to an Indian dealer, and I'm like, well, let's just stop in. That'd be cool to look at. And I sit on the bike. She rides with me all the time. She's very avid about it. So I sit on the motorcycle and stand it up off the kickstand, and just doing that, she said, I can tell just from that the balance of that bike is better. I was on a Harley Ultra Classic at that time. I can tell just from seeing you do that, the balance is better on that bike. And so then I still own two motorcycles. I had the Harley and a Boulevard. So I said to the dealer, I've got these two bikes. They gave me in trade what I bought those bikes for. And the Boulevard, I'd had 3 years already. The Harley, I had 1 year. The trade value was so high that those two motorcycles plus a couple grand in cash, I ended up with a 2015 Indian Roadmaster. And this one, I love it. And it's they've got the center of gravity thing figured out. It's just, it handles so nice. And the Harley's the one. I did a 4,000 mile trip last fall with Charlie. We went from here on the bikes to the Blue Ridge Parkway, and then we rode the Blue Ridge Parkway end to end. That's and then came back up through Ohio and Michigan, across the lake on the ferry, and then back to Wisconsin. So I had lots of miles on that Harley and was pretty comfortable with it. But man, the Roadmaster is absolutely amazing.
I don't know why I feel pride, but Indian Motorcycles is from Springfield, Mass, where I live. So I'm just like,
there you go.
Hometown go team.
Yeah. So it's I am a huge fan now of I think I'll probably be on an Indian the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And I told my friend Paul, so part of it, the Harley was an 09 with 45,000 miles. And I said, I'm 61. I'm kind of looking for, maybe, is this my last motorcycle? And so if I get something that's I ride about 6,000 miles a summer. If I get something that's in a 10,000 mile range, 20,000 mile range, and I put 60,000 miles on it over the next 10 years, then am I done? And he started laughing at me. He said, I know how you are. Like, you're going to drive that thing for 5 years, then you're going to find something else you like. And said, I'm pretty sure you're going to still be on a motorcycle when you're 80. So it's probably not my last bike, but no, man, it's, and then, so you got to stop me because I'll just ramble forever, but we did a short trip north on Friday. And I had these crazy cool cameras on the Harley that we put on for the Blue Ridge Parkway trip. So Charlie and I documented that whole trip, and all that content is on fixmyhog.com, the whole Blue Ridge Parkway trip. So I hadn't yet put the cameras onto this bike. So Krista and I went north on Friday and ended up 20 feet from a black bear that's trying to cross the road in front of us. And I had pumped the brakes from 65 down to about 40 with this thing in front of us, and no camera on the bike. I've got an Insta360 camera on the handlebar, but it's not running at that moment. And then these other cameras I had never swapped. So I spent Sunday afternoon putting the cameras onto the new bike because I don't want to miss any more potentially.
I was going to say that hurts. Yeah. Knowing that you could have had that footage.
Like, to have been that close. And it wasn't like a nail biter. I mean, it was very exciting, but it never, I didn't have to
turn
lock up brakes
and start approaching you. Yeah.
So, but man, what cool footage that would have been to have on that front facing.
Yeah.
So,
well,
not going to happen again. The camera's on now. So, well, congrats on your job change.
Thank you.
And, I hope it goes swimmingly, and we'll see you in October at Maker Camp.
Perfect. All right. Have a great day.
I did.
All right. I hope you really enjoyed hearing his story and getting to know him a bit. And as you heard, and heard lots of it, we are really excited for Makers Camp. So if you're pondering going, check it out. It's the Catskill Maker Camp, and it is in the Catskills of New York. It's coming up this October, and we're going to be there in full force. Myself and Sadie Mae from the Awesome Orange going to be out there carving, doing demos, having some competitions. So come show us what you could do. Teach us how you use the burrs, because I'm just learning really 1/8 inch ones and playing around with them more than I was before. I am a flap disc girl. That's how I got into it. So for me, I like using the sabretooth wheels, and that is where I started my journey, and it's a lot of fun branching out and trying some new tools. So come show me what you know. I want to learn. So come check it out.